everybody, and welcome to Genre Exposure, a podcast where we explore genre cinema and hopefully introduce you to some movies that you haven't seen. So this week, we're going to talk about John Woo's epic 1992 action film, Hardworld, starring Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung. But first, let's introduce our host today. I'm Michael. This is Dustin.
Hey.
This is Jason.
Hi, everybody.
All right, guys. So as we do every time, let's go ahead and just talk about what we watched during the week. Dustin, what'd you watch?
Well, I had some backlog of stuff I received for Christmas from a certain fellow, Jason. And so for the first time ever, I checked out Naked Lunch by David Cronenberg.
Yes.
You lucky man.
It was an interesting experience. I'm not even sure how to give a plot briefly if you've never seen it, but based on a novel by William S. Burroughs. I struggled with it a lot. I have a fear of bugs. They really get to me no matter what. There was lots of it, and all, of course, enlarged and sickeningly and Cronenberg enhanced. But I thought it was very good, very surreal. I love a trippy mess with your mind movie, and I loved it start to finish.
Funny thing, one of the first horror films that I watched when Jason and I were roommates was Naked Lunch. Because Jason was like, you know what? If you're going to live here, you should see if you can handle this movie or not. And I remember sitting there watching it and being like, I'm sorry, excuse me, what, Jason? What are we watching?
That's right. Watching Naked Lunch while having lunch naked, actually, was...
You were having lunch naked.
Oh, my.
I was fully clothed and uncomfortable.
So Jason,
but you enjoyed the movie, and that's the point.
I did. I loved the movie. The movie's great. Your nudity... less so.
So this movie is kind of special to you, right? Because I noticed you have a book all about it. You
Indeed.
recommend it often. So what is it about Naked Lunch for you?
Well, I was always a huge Cronenberg fan. And Naked Lunch, I think, is one of his finest films. I think it's one of the most well-directed and shot. Of course, the source material, the book itself is amazing. Hard to read, challenging, but amazing. And it just always resonated with me.
By hard to read, do you mean there's a lot of big words in it?
There's a few big words, yes, but mostly because it's very stream of consciousness, beat generation, strange.
Okay. And there's just something about Cronenberg for me in general, like all his films, there's an uneasiness in almost everything he does, and it partially is that body horror stuff. It's something about how he hones in on this idea of people changing and transforming into something else, and kind of in all of his films, there's like a element of that just it always leaves you uneasy. Even no matter how many times you've watched one of his films, it sticks with you.
Agreed.
Jason, what'd you watch?
Probably the most interesting movie I watched in the last week or so was a movie called Blood Beat. 1982 quote supernatural slasher film from Wisconsin. It's now streaming on Amazon Prime. If anyone has that, would like to watch it. It's very entertaining. I wouldn't say it's a good movie, but it's a very interesting movie where you will not be bored. And especially if you're from Wisconsin, I'm sure you'll see maybe some people you recognize and some locations you might know. And it's entertaining. I recommend it.
And it's now restored. It's a brisk, 4:3 film. Vinegar Syndrome, bless them.
Apparently mistakenly shot in 4:3 because the
I've heard that,
cinematographer thought it was a TV movie.
It's worth the time. It's very entertaining. It does drag a bit, but you spend so much of the time kind of just trying to figure out what's going on and why they thought, scene to scene, this made sense somehow.
Wait, so just so everybody understands, Jason, why don't you tell us just, in a few words, what is Blood Beat about?
Please.
It's about an hour and a half. And
most importantly, this is how much time you will spend with this quote unquote
how much of your time will be wasted. But no, basically it is about a girl who has a psychic connection with a ghost-like samurai warrior who goes about killing people in her vicinity. Why there is a samurai warrior ghost in Wisconsin, I don't know.
Okay, and I have to ask, does this girl have any reason to be possessed by a samurai warrior?
No.
Okay. Okay.
And it has one of the most bonkers final acts of any film you could watch.
Yeah, like Manitou.
And it would be a great double with Ninja 3.
Yes.
I was going to put that out there.
So if any of you guys are stuck at home, like you should be, and need something else to kill the time, Jason recommends you should go watch Bloodbeat.
You could do worse than Bloodbeat, definitely.
Oh, yeah. I'll make fun of it, but I had a fun time. I'd go again.
Yeah.
So should you be inebriated while watching Bloodbeat?
It doesn't hurt.
All right, there you go. There's a glaring endorsement.
What about you, Michael? Did you watch anything interesting?
So you know how you have those movies on your shelf that you're like, yeah, I know that movie. Oh shit, have I watched that movie before?
I have too many of those.
Yeah, this one was out of the package, so I feel like I should have watched it, but I clearly didn't because I didn't remember anything about it when I watched it. But actually went back and visited Christopher Nolan's 2006 The Prestige.
Yeah, good movie.
Classic.
Yeah, it's really good. Very well acted, very well shot. I mean, that's kind of nothing to expect from Nolan, though.
Yeah, it's Nolan.
no
You can just say that, and
Yeah.
that says so much already.
Like, it doesn't matter. Nolan could, poop on a piece of film, and you're like, well, that's shot well.
It's high art.
Yeah, it's good. It's a really good film. Christian Bale's pretty awesome in it. I honestly think he kind of gets outshined a little bit by Hugh Jackman. Bale's usually the one who's the over-the-top, in-your-face actor, but
I think Jackman has the flashier role in that movie, too, though.
He
He has
does.
the meatier part.
He does. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think there's a reason for that.
Not going to spoil anything for a 20-year-old movie. How old is that?
No.
When was that?
So much of that film is kind of built upon the revelations as you go, I think, right?
Yeah,
You'd
yeah.
say?
And I don't want to spoil it for anybody because if you haven't seen it, it's been so long now, nobody's going to talk about it. So nobody's going to be like, oh my God, did you watch The Prestige over the weekend? Well, let me tell you what happened.
Well, apparently we are.
That's because we're genre experts.
That's right.
So, I mean, kind of once you know the resolve of the film, kind of might kill it for you. So I'm not going to say anything, but definitely can recommend this movie.
I would actually argue it's one of those movies that even if you know the ending, it's so good it's worth watching anyway. And in some ways, it might even enrich the viewing process.
Well,
I can see that.
I'll say this: I love it, but I've never really gone back to revisit it ever.
Actually, I haven't either.
I've never felt that compulsion to just, I want to go back. I want to get in this again. His other films, plenty, but never The Prestige.
But now I feel like watching it again. So, well
I
done,
mean,
Michael.
if nothing else, you get David Bowie as Nikola Tesla.
This is true.
True.
Never
And
get enough David Bowie.
Really cool, too. Andy Serkis is in it, and I forgot about that.
Who is he? In
He
that?
actually plays Nikola Tesla's kind of Igor character.
That's right. Yes. Okay.
Andy
Right.
Serkis showed up, and I was like, holy shit, it's Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, who's Andy Serkis? And I didn't have time to go into the glories of Andy Serkis, but
Make time for it later.
yeah, I should. Yeah, I should. She didn't seem to care. All right, so now that we got those out of the way, let's jump right on in. Hard Boiled.
Okay. Michael, this was your pick.
It was.
What made you pick Hard Boiled?
So even before I ever started watching horror films, action was always my thing. God, I grew up on Die Hard.
Sure.
How many times did I watch Die Hard? I grew up sitting with my grandfather just watching every action movie that came on TV, all the USA reruns. God, how many times have you seen Under Siege? Because I lost count.
Love it.
And when I started getting into horror films, it was actually when we were rooming together, and you were like, have you ever watched any Chinese action films? Because you really like action. And I was like, no, I don't really think I've ever seen any of those. And you were like, well, dude, you need to learn about John Woo. And what we watched first together, you showed me a clip of The Killer.
Yes.
And good God, is that an awesome movie.
Oh, yeah.
But kind of what snagged me, though, John Woo's other films don't quite have the flash for me that Hard Boiled does.
Mm-hmm.
Hard Boiled is in your face and flashy throughout the whole movie. This movie is just what can we film and how much can we do? So finding out that Dustin had actually not really visited much of John Woo's cinema, I chose Hard Boiled.
So I'll own up to this kind of out of the gate. a lot of Chinese cinema is kind of a black hole for me. With anything, you only have so much time to go into stuff. People that listen to this will rapidly learn that Japan is kind of my focus in a lot of things. And so...
They're like right next to each other, though, on the map.
So I've heard of all these films, but I've never had the opportunity to see them. So I'm glad to finally start checking some of those off.
Yeah, and Hardboiled, my God. Okay, so let's just start talking about it. All right, so...
Yeah, what is Hardboiled about?
All right, I'll give you the synopsis. A cop who loses his partner in a shootout with gun smugglers goes on a mission to catch him. In order to get closer to the leaders of the ring, he joins forces with an undercover cop who's working as a gangster hitman. They use all means of excessive force to find them.
Did you just read the back of the DVD box or something?
Yeah, it's actually the IMDb
okay.
synopsis.
Well, that's a succinct synopsis.
I mean, there's so much more going on in Hardboiled than that, but...
Excessive force is an understatement, I feel like.
Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just start talking about that.
All right, so 1992, directed by John Woo.
Starring Chow Yun-fat.
And what genre of film is this specifically? Or actually subgenre, I guess, to be exact.
Think you're the one to answer that one.
Okay, I will. It is what is known as Heroic Bloodshed. And that was a term coined by the editor, Rick Baker, not the makeup effects, Rick Baker, in the magazine Eastern Heroes, to refer to a group of movies that were coming out in the late 80s that had very stylized action sequences and had verbose, dramatic themes of brotherhood and loyalty and violence. Lots and lots of violence.
What other movies can you think of that would have been in?
Oh, I think the first one's widely considered to be John Woo's first big breakout movie, which was Better Tomorrow with Chow Yun-fat.
Cool. Okay.
Ringo Lam also did a few of those. Andy Lau.
And so Chow's had several collaborations with Woo, right?
Yes. He's basically the De Niro to Woo's Scorsese.
Okay, well, I've got a technical question as sort of the newcomer to all of this, and I'm sure one of you can explain this. It was true when we watched this movie, and it's been true in some other Chinese films I've checked out. When we're talking about the audio, there's usually two tracks. There's Mandarin and Cantonese.
Yes.
What's the difference? Which one should I be going to listen to? Does it matter? Is there a reason that I can care or discern?
Well, like a lot of foreign films, Hong Kong films, they weren't filmed with sync sound. They did everything ADR.
Right.
Usually the actors would supply their actual dub their own acting. I personally go with Cantonese because that's what was spoken in Hong Kong largely at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a preference of mine.
I agree. So, and as far as Mandarin goes, Mandarin is going to be what's spoken now, throughout most of mainland China. So if you go pick up Hardboiled now and you watch it in Cantonese, most people are going to be like, I'm sorry, what? It would be just like us watching, something without subtitles in a language we don't speak.
Right.
So, but yeah, Jason's right. Like it's pretty much, it was the language spoken in Hong Kong and mostly still is spoken in Hong Kong. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe so.
I believe that it is still mostly spoken in Hong Kong, but only Hong Kong.
And this movie was released a few years before the Chinese handover, because before that, Hong Kong was a British colony, so of course all the movies that were played in Hong Kong also had to have English subtitles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the veracity of those English subtitles were up to debate sometimes. They were often very flawed and quickly translated, and sometimes you get some very amusing translations. But, yeah, and I think this film, probably more than a lot of the action films at the time, kind of reflects that tension of the coming handover. It just feels like John Woo was just really intense on producing the best John Woo film possible. It was kind of his last hurrah, I think. He knew before. And actually, he did leave Hong Kong after this. This was his last Hong Kong movie for a long time.
And then he transitioned to Hollywood.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And God, how that changed. We're talking Mission Impossible 2 here, guys.
Well, he did Hard Target first. Which
he did Hard Target, which has its...
I like
it
Hard
has
Target.
Its moments.
There are a lot of scenes in not full contact. It's a different Chow Yun-fat movie, which I also recommend. But in Hardboiled, there's a lot of scenes that he would reuse in Hard Target.
Interesting.
If you go back and watch Hard Target, which I did recently watch some clips from, the stunts don't hold up as well. You can definitely tell the difference between a Hong Kong stunt crew and an American stunt crew and what they're willing to do.
Yeah, American stunt crews aren't willing to die for the movie.
I mean, that's probably a good idea. But you can definitely tell, and it shows. I mean, like, there's definitely a transition of Hong Kong John Woo and then Hollywood John Woo.
Oh, sure. And the producers, they cut the hell out of that movie. It was originally given NC-17 ratings due to violence.
Oh,
So they trimmed like a good 8 minutes or something like that.
Oh, wow. I actually didn't know that. So we won't judge John Woo on his Hollywood films. I mean, they're there. They're what they are. But if you're going to watch John Woo,
You got to go to Hong Kong.
you got to go to Hong Kong.
And I do have one little production thing I do want to talk about.
All right.
This is just very personal to me. If you go way down in the cast list, you'll notice a Japanese name in there. Jun Kunimura. Happens to be a favorite of mine. If you work through a lot of, I'll just say Asian cinema in general, you'll probably notice this guy. You'll recognize his face. And Hardboiled, he is the maniac in the restaurant at the start with the Uzi.
You nerded out hardcore, too, when we were watching
Yeah,
this.
I lost my... I've never seen him so young and so good-looking. I've seen him through all the ages, but this was another Jun Kunimura.
You nerded out hard.
And just to see him going toe-to-toe with Chow, it was great.
Well, I always thought he had a striking presence in the movie. The first time I saw it, which was a long time ago back in college, seeing that actor, I thought he was going to be the big bad or something because he had that presence.
He just, anything he's in, it doesn't matter if it's a bit part, if he's the main character, whatever, just his demeanor, his face, everything about how he carries himself, he just grabs the screen and demands your attention. So I was very surprised to see him pop up here. I did not know that. It was very pleasant.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
yeah.
welcome.
And that scene you're talking about in the tea house, that was actually a scene shot before the movie was even scripted. Because that was a real tea house that was going to be demolished. So John Woo was like, okay, I'm making a movie. I have everyone together. I have my crew. We're going to hurry over here. We're going to quickly kind of sketch out a scene, and we're going to shoot it. So they didn't have to worry about damaging anything with all those explosives and squibs and stuff, because it was going to get demolished anyway.
They probably actually cut down on demolition costs.
They did half of it for free, right?
John Woo was like, I can blow this building up for you.
Yeah, so they had no idea who Chow Yun-fat was playing at the time. They're just like, you're a cop. These are bad guys. Go shoot them.
That's incredible.
But it fits. Like, when you're watching that, knowing that story now, I'm thinking of that scene, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it does seem... That scene is disconnected from the rest of the film in a way, but serves an integral part of the story. So that's super cool now, knowing that.
Right.
And really, that is the opening of the film. So if we just want to talk about that as a scene, what a way to kick off a movie.
Yeah.
Holy shit, just... Even the way it's shot, as they kind of pan all the way around through the restaurant at first, and it's almost like they set up every little bit that they're going to use later for some kind of action scene, sliding across a table, diving over something.
This is definitely when you watch this film, all the action movies that you can think of that you grew up on, some of the greats, you should be seeing elements of what you grew up on in these shots.
Definitely.
You know that John Woo had seen all these films of the 70s and 80s going through, and he's like, I'm stealing that. I'm taking that.
Well, that's exactly right, because this was his answer to the American action movies by people like Clint Eastwood and Steve McQueen. This was his American movie.
And it feels it, though, but it's it's if we took Hollywood out of it and didn't dial back what we could do. And John Woo's like, this is my response. Let me show you what Hong Kong can do.
And there's more action in that one opening sequence than there are in most American action films.
Oh, God. Yeah,
especially at the time.
In most American action films, that opening sequence is the damn finale of an American action film that people will talk about leaving the theater and oh, my God, I want to go watch it again for that final sequence. No, John Woo kicks the door open with that sequence.
Yeah. And
if we're talking about that too, I think another key thing is that rail slide. down out of the restaurant
Mhm.
is just
And
stellar.
that was also impromptu. I mean, they just saw the rail and they're like, "Well, how about you slide down shooting 2 guns at the same time?"
Have you ever fired 2 guns at the same time?
Chow Yun Fat has many times.
Oh, I think we all know how many times Chow Yun has done it. So, obviously, I'd seen the movie before.
Mm-hmm.
Jason had actually seen the movie before because he introduced me to it. Let me go ahead and throw this out. The version of the film that we were watching was Dragon Dynasty's remaster of it on Blu-ray. It looks really good for...
As good as it can, I think.
Yeah, as good as it can. I mean,
looks great.
you're not going to get a great 4K scan restoration kind of a thing out of this movie, but having owned the DVD and then, Jason presenting me with this on my birthday.
Mm-hmm. You were about to say how old you were,
yeah,
weren't you?
I was.
Lovely.
On my birthday as a birthday gift for the night that we're watching it. It looks great. It sounds great. I think you can still pick this up. You picked it up pretty easily,
Yeah,
right?
Sure. Yeah, it was on Amazon.
Yeah, so easy to find. I mean, I don't think you're going to find it streaming anywhere,
I couldn't.
which is unfortunate
That's a shame.
because I know everybody's sitting at home. The easiest thing to do is find it streaming. However, I do think this one is worth seeking out.
It's one you'll watch many, many times.
Hell, I've watched it at least 5 or 6.
It really makes you wish there was like a platform where they kind of just streamed all this kind of Asian cinema stuff.
Get on that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone
should
go
do
make that.
Anyone listening out there with a lot of money, do that.
Or influence, that's cool too.
All you Redditors, just come together.
Listen, if you can soar GameStop to the top, you can get us an Asian streaming network
Do
for
it.
all these films.
Do it now.
All right, so now we've seen it. Dustin, what did you think of it?
So I've seen one other of these movies. I've seen The Killer.
Which is awesome. Which is also awesome.
Jason also introduced me to. I loved that one. And really, it just blows you away. I don't really know another way to describe it. Just the level of action and how they escalate and frame the shots and the meticulousness to choreograph all of this stuff is just, out the window.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe personally, I have a little closer connection to The Killer. It's got that, more somber mood.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So that, on a personal level, speaks to me more. But as far as just like a spectacle, Hardboiled is just at the top. You'd be hard-pressed to surpass it in any way.
Would you say it'd be hard-pressed to top Hard-Boiled?
Absolutely. But even just the audio, the way they've done everything with that, when the shotguns come in the picture, and they're just blowing people away, every boom of a shot.
Oh, yeah, you feel
You
it.
feel it as you're watching.
And the entire scenery blows apart. It's not... It's what we describe as hyper-realistic, because when you fire a gun into even like a steel wall, it's going to make a hole. It's just going to do a little punch. But in a John Woo movie, sparks fly out.
Oh, yeah.
Papers go flying. People go flying. I mean, John Woo got a lot of probably critique in America for using the slow motion so much, but he knows how to use it. Slow motion can be a really overused technique, but Woo and his editor, they know just when to stop and go back to 24 frames per second, and it just makes it so exciting, I think.
And part of it, too, is just the movement of the camera. I felt like it was always in motion, and even in those slow motion segments, you're kind of panning around something or moving through somewhere.
Right.
So even as it slows down, you're still like right there in the action.
And speaking of the action, one of the actors in the movie who plays Mad Dog, Philip Kwok. He went by Philip Kwok in this movie. Philip Kwok was the action choreographer, and the character of Mad Dog that he plays did not originally exist in the script. They were just so impressed by his physicality and his ability, and they knew that they needed to have like a heavy for Tony Leung and Chow Yun-fat to fight, that they wrote the character of Mad Dog in there. Because they didn't think that Anthony Wong had that immediate,
Well, he
physical
doesn't.
presence. He's the brains,
Yeah, he's clearly, the mob boss.
Right.
He's not the guy who picks up the gun. Mad Dog's the guy who picks up the gun. And something that I was just thinking about, and I was trying to find some info on this, but there's another Mad Dog in a pretty recent awesome action film, which is The Raid.
Yeah.
Classic.
And the characters are very parallel.
Yeah, you think it's an homage, the name?
I think it
Could
totally
be.
is. I was looking to see if that was listed anywhere
A
online.
little trivia fact or
I
something.
didn't see anything. But those two characters are, they play the same role, in the film. One is much more of a, quote, mad dog than the other. But no, I kind of wondered that. Maybe we can get an answer to that.
Yeah, do some research on.
So clearly, Jason, you love the movie.
Mm-hmm. Clearly.
What made you be okay with watching it again?
As I said before, it's infinitely rewatchable. I mean, you just don't get tired of it.
I would agree. I have to completely agree. There were times, like as many times as I've seen this, I found myself like looking at you, Dustin, like grinning, like, oh my God, wait till he sees this.
It's that moment when you know it's coming and you want to see the experience for the first time on someone else.
Oh, it was so great. It was so great to watch you watch it. That sounded creepy, didn't
That's
it?
a little creepy, but it's okay. No, I love
cool.
you, man. It's okay.
That's cool.
So I will say we're all, sunshine and flowers about this film, but I do think I wouldn't call it a perfect film.
No, it's got its flaws, and I'm open to talk about those flaws.
What kind of flaws does it have?
I think to me there were a few pieces in the plot where they kind of really, really slowed down, almost to the point where it was kind of dragging a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed I was kind of looking to the clock and thinking, where's this going? Is this going to add anything? What really stood out to me is everything to do with this vault and the guns that are being held.
Yeah, really close to the third act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the
before it kicks
film,
in.
the big bad, played by Anthony Wong, has a cache of guns beneath a hospital in the basement, in the secret vault.
And initially, I think the setup with the hospital's great because kind of like the restaurant, and then in the middle of the film with the warehouse. At first, we just very casually pan through all about the hospital, and all of it is just set up to later. Everything you've seen gets used somehow in an action stunt, which is great. But once we go down to that vault, it's just like the brakes hit. And I guess it's supposed to be sort of a character moment between Tequila and Alan, but
That's probably some of the most character development you get between the two of them, but I'm not sure that it was done in the most efficient way.
It feels like there's 2 or 3 scenes in the vault alone with them. You're right. And that could have been shortened to 1, I think. Although Tony Leung and Chow Yun-fat do have great chemistry.
And what I do want to say is I do think there's some really good economical storytelling that they've made with the movie. We learn a lot about both leads, and it's kind of just in incidental ways, like Tequila's love of jazz music. They just show us just enough that we kind of get a sense of him and who he is and sort of the grief he has that his partner gets gunned down in the opening of the film. And with Alan, it's this sort of dream to kind of get away from everything and go off. And, he brings up that he's been undercover for so long, he's starting to lose track of who he really is.
Right, like the things that you see him doing. I mean, this is kind of...
And they don't dwell on it, but they give you just enough that it's like you know who these people are and kind of their motivations and what they're about.
Right, like this guy's so embedded within this crime family that, they're ready to like make him the successor almost. Like when even the children of the head of this crime organization are kind of like not next in line, really. Like, that's how embedded he is.
Right. Tony Leung has been working for one of the triad bosses, Uncle Hoy, and it's obvious that he and Uncle Hoy have like a father-son relationship almost, and he genuinely cares for him. So in that warehouse scene we were just talking about, Anthony Wong's character forces Alan to kill Uncle Hoy. And I think it's just a great scene. It's really a showcase for Tony Leung. You see the emotion on his face when he does kill his boss. And after he Uncle Hoy asks Alan to spare his men. It's like, kill me, fine, but please spare my men. And then Alan shoots him and then walks away. You just see all this grief come over his face. And then he just grabs someone's machine gun, turns around, guns down all of Uncle Hoy's men. And it's just that despair and rage,
very
and
hard-hitting
shame
moment.
and guilt. Yeah, it's just it's
You don't get a lot from his past, but you feel like he didn't have much of a family.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason that he was chosen to embed himself into this crime family. But no, that scene's hard. That scene packs a lot more emotional punch than a lot of action films that we've all grown up watching.
Or even a character-driven drama where there's a lot of build-up. Still, this had the same hit.
Yeah, I think it could easily there's so much drama in this film that could easily get washed away. by how much stuff explodes in this film, which is literally everything. But the story that's being told it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not anything new, but it's a good story.
Right.
And honestly, I feel like a whole lot of, I'm not going to say buddy cop films like took from this, because we had Lethal Weapon before this, but you know, like,
I think there's definitely a bit of Lethal Weapon in this film.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, with a horribly less amount of Gary Busey.
Is that a good or a bad thing? I'm not sure.
It just depends, Jason. It really depends on which Gary Busey you get on that day.
And one of John Woo's apparently frequent directions to Tony Leung was Always Lonely. Alan is always lonely. So apparently Tony Leung would also kind of keep away from everyone on set. Kind of be kept at a distance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I don't know if we want to go into spoilers or not.
I think we've spoiled enough of the film already.
Yeah.
But if you watch any John Woo films, you know that the heroes tend to die frequently. And Alan was supposed to die at the end of this.
Oh, you could feel that.
But the rest of the crew were like, no, let him have a happy ending. Don't kill him. So John Woo spared him, and Alan gets to sail off into the sunset at the end of the movie.
Which I do believe Mythbusters had an episode about, shooting bullets through things like a lighter or something metal to protect yourself. And pretty sure it doesn't quite work like that. But,
well, it's all about the caliber and the angle.
Mm-hmm. It's so awesome. I just give it a pass, Why not?
I mean, yeah, these are movies that you have to, extend disbelief to.
People are taking gunshots at point blank range, and they're still, moving and firing back. It's not exactly realistic. Everything's hyper stylized.
It's so much fun.
But unlike a lot of films, though, I feel like, this is going to sound like a John Woo catchphrase or something, but I feel like almost every bullet tells a story.
Ooh.
Every shot that is fired.
Nice.
You almost feel like you do feel it was intentional. You feel like every shot that's fired is moving that story forward in some way. And good God, when you get the shotguns out, like, you're really moving the story forward. But no, I mean, yes, I'm still fawning all over this movie, but it does have its issues, like, it's got some pacing issues that
It's a bit long.
Yeah.
Could be probably cut by 10, 15 minutes.
And for me, a little bit, the final act is amazing, but there's this whole subplot about the babies. We gotta get the babies out.
Right.
We gotta get the babies down. And it just, his boss in the film, her name's Teresa Chang. She's played by, help.
Teresa Mo.
Teresa Mo.
And fun fact, do you know who was supposed to play her character at first? Michelle Yeoh.
Oh,
wow.
awesome.
That's interesting. No, I think she's only in the film a little bit, but I think every moment she's on, she's great. But just this whole subplot of saving the babies,
You feel like there's something cut out there.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm getting from that is the relationship between Tequila and Teresa.
Definitely.
I'm getting that she wanted more, and she wanted a baby, and Tequila, he's just too cool for that.
Well, his name's Tequila, of course. He is.
I mean, Inspector Tequila Yuen can't settle down and have children. So,
I mean, I will say, though, despite kind of getting hung up on it, I do think there's great payoff in the end when it's the one baby left.
Yeah.
And he has no option but just to tote it in his arms for the final fight.
It's a very lone wolf and cub moment. Yeah, holding the infant and shooting bad guys with the gun in the other hand. It's,
And even how they play it for comedy a little bit, where he gets set on fire, and just by happenstance, the baby puts it out for him.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The original plot for this movie was inspired by a real incident in Japan.
Oh.
So, Dustin, you might actually know a movie that's already been based on this event. But apparently someone was poisoning baby food.
That does sound a little familiar.
Yeah, so I guess it was going to be about Chow Yun-fat fighting some baby food poisoner.
Interesting.
But we was afraid it would inspire copycats.
Oh.
And portray any actor, like if Johnny Wong was playing a guy who poisons babies, it might portray them in too negative of a light.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, guys who poison babies are pretty scum of the
It's
earth.
pretty evil. I mean, being a gun-running, triad leader.
No, I can look over that.
But I could see with that angle a little bit, it kind of gels the baby plot a little more in there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely where the babies came in on. Yeah.
Yeah, anything else you know about this movie?
Well, speaking of triads, apparently during production, according to the producer Teresa Chang, they had to pay off actual triad members
Oh, nice.
to leave their production alone.
Why? Because it was too real?
I think that's common practice there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's something.
There's
cool.
something about some films when they're made, there's a bit of danger in their production, I think, and often that translates into the film itself.
I think you might be right. Especially in a movie like this. I think it shows.
I mean, those are things that, might color your view of the film, but I mean, totally makes me think about things again after knowing that.
Well, apparently it was actually kind of a dangerous set because John Woo was getting a little too, shall we say, frivolous with the explosives.
You don't say. You don't say.
And actually, in one scene, the famous scene where Mad Dog and Alan are shooting at each other while running, shooting at each other through the glass in the hospital, that was real glass.
Oh, wow.
And some of the glass got in Tony Leung's eyes. And he kept going. You could see him. He's kind of,
Because
holding
he's a
his-
professional.
He's a
What a
professional. But he kept going, shot the scene, and then they rushed him to the hospital. But he apparently was in very big danger of losing eyesight from that.
Well, listen here. I mean, he can go cry to Jackie Chan about it.
So as far as the story, there is one thing I really liked. I guess if you go through a lot of action films, this isn't something that's like innovative, but I really appreciated the stances of the two leads as far as like who they are as people. You've got Alan, who's a double agent, and he's been one for so long he feels like he's sort of lost in the darkness at this point, unsure of himself, who he is. Will he one day shoot down an ally? Who even are his allies now? And then you have Tequila, who kind of uses, I would say, like, he has this very lightheartedness about him. And it seems to me like they suggest that this is a front that he puts out because he's been through some shit. Not just what we've seen, losing a partner in the opening in the restaurant, but even up to this point. You can tell in some of his conversations to his superiors that they've gone around a lot.
Right.
About how far, how hard he's pushed things. And you can just tell he's been through a lot. And so you've got, the one who's sort of couched in this darkness, and then this other one who uses his own lightheartedness to kind of mask and deal with that. And I think it really pays off at the end of the film when Tequila gets so determined that Alan will survive and make it through to the end. There's one moment in the hospital where when things are not going so well, Alan kind of gets that determination that he's just going to sacrifice himself so that they can make it through and it'll be okay. And he really pushes for him to keep on going.
And it makes me wonder if that's what you were talking about. Like, if maybe that was in the original script,
Right.
that's where he was going to kick it.
Kind of a reflection of the crew's attitude at the time, too. Like, no, let Alan live. Let's have a happy ending for once.
Yeah.
And then it comes full circle in that standoff. It really seems like the only solution is to just shoot through Alan to get him. But Alan chooses to live by kind of setting up with the lighter to block the bullet and then like forcefully shooting himself to open it up.
Pulled a total Grief Karga.
Mm-hmm.
Total Grief Karga. Mandalorian reference for you guys there.
But you make a good point, Dustin, about Tequila's determination and myopic view of law enforcement, because he has the typical rounded rounds with his superior, like you always see in these movies. Right. Speaking of the superior, played by Teresa Chang. Scratch that. That is incorrect. Philip Chang. Chan.
I'm totally leaving that in.
Take three. Tequila Superior, the superintendent, played by
Philip Chan.
Played by Philip Chan, was actually a real Hong Kong police officer, a real detective.
Oh, cool.
And he was actually in charge of undercover agents. And he's gone on to have like a very successful career. He speaks fluent English. He's been in tons of movies. But my point was that Tequila's perseverance is shown because he goes into that warehouse single-handedly, And yeah, that's a scene you've seen before, the one lone hero taking on an army of goons. But, and this is another John Wooism, you always see the two guys pointing the guns at each other, right in the forehead. And neither of them are shooting, because either they respect each other, or they're just kind of sizing each other up.
Or they're out of bullets.
But in this scene, when Alan and Tequila come head to head, and Tequila at this point doesn't know Alan, he thinks he's a triad member. They both have their guns at each other's heads, but Tequila immediately squeezes his trigger. He's ready to drop him. So it's like the one John Woo scene standoff where someone actually does pull the trigger, but of course, yeah, he was out of bullets, so couldn't kill him.
Yeah, there's just we don't get a lot of characterization, but just in his portrayal, there's a depth there that I think that's a little greater than what it might seem at first.
Agreed.
At this time, like, we'd really like to hear what you guys have to say about the film. So we've talked about it. We've spoiled the hell out of it. But hopefully in the future you'll see what we're going to be watching next. And you can go watch it, before you come listen to the episode. And then we want you to write to us at genreexposure@gmail.com.
And I really think it's a do what you wish. If you're not sure about a movie and you don't care about spoilers and you just want to listen in and figure out if it's right for you, you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would love for people to be excited and get along with us and kind of follow film to film and check it out and tell us what you think. We'll be happy to read them on air, break them down if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if it's your favorite film and you want to wax philosophical about it.
Go for it, man.
Yeah, I want to dig in on all of it.
And you can join us on social media, on your favorite platforms there. We'll provide links to those for you. So, yeah, we want to hear what you guys have to say about this. But final thoughts on Hardboiled before we put it to rest. Dustin, final thoughts.
I've got a lot more John Woo to get through, so I can only really compare it to The Killer. I like The Killer a little more, but still, even with all my hang-ups, I use Letterboxd. If I had to put down a star rating, I would still give it 5 stars.
Damn.
I think even with its faults, it's still just an incredible film, super fun. It's a blast start to finish.
I would like to point out that the last 2 films I've brought to our movie club have been 5 out of 5 stars for Dustin, and Jason is running on not that good of a rating.
Well, we'll see about next week.
Well, I'm like a twisted Simon Cowell, because if I love it, I easily give a 5 star. But if I have a hang up, I really get hung up about it. So
you don't have nearly as much of a British accent either.
We'll see how that pans out as we go film to film.
So Dustin, you'd recommend it?
Absolutely. If you want a great action film, if you want to get into Hong Kong cinema, anything of John Woo, it's a great starting point, I think.
Jason?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it's important to go back and watch older movies like this, because without this type of movie, we never would have gotten The Matrix. We wouldn't have gotten John Wick.
Oh, God, I was thinking about
because those are direct descendants of this movie.
When you think of this, the scene in the lobby of The Matrix, John Woo could have directed that.
Oh, easily.
Like, so many films now, once you watch this, you're like, oh, you see the connection points.
The Wachowskis were worshiping at the altar of John Woo there. Very much so.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if I were to give it a star rating, I would probably give it 4.5 stars, only because it's not A Better Tomorrow or The Killer.
So if I can quantify a little bit, your 5 stars are very hard to get.
They are.
Yeah. Even if you love the movie, you just something about it.
It is not something I give lightly, no.
Okay. Michael.
I think I'm going to have to be with Jason on this one, though. As much as I love Hardboiled, it's got some hang-ups.
Definitely.
So I'm not going to say it's a perfect film. I don't think I can give it 5 out of 5, but I think I could easily give it 4.5 out of 5. And the rewatch, like when you go back and rewatch these, like, yeah, man, it holds up. It holds up really strong.
Oh, yeah.
But as you rewatch it, you start to see some things. You're like, ooh, I think I might have been blinded a little bit by the excitement of the first time I watched that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. Like, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go back and watch films and try to critique them and see, what holds up, what didn't. I think it's an important thing to do. So
yeah,
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5, but I'm going to say absolutely go buy this movie. I wish you could rent it. Maybe you can. Maybe you can do one of the rental services and rent it online.
There's no way of knowing. There's no way we can actually check that right now.
It shifts and changes
no,
so much.
We would have to have a full access to the internet right now to be able to pull that up and check it.
It's impossible.
And I'm sorry, but we don't have that kind of budget.
It's impossible to go to justwatch.com and see if it's streaming.
It's
anywhere
impossible.
right now.
Yeah.
But
no.
I am a collector. That's another thing people will learn quickly as we go. So if I do want to add this to my collection, it's the Dragon Dynasty Blu-ray I want to be looking for.
That's one to go with, yes.
And if you guys want to play along with a drinking game with us, every time Dustin says, "I've got the blue," you guys take a shot. You'll be blitzed.
Just
by
not
the...
if you're driving.
Yeah, if you're driving, don't be taking shots.
Wait
but-
till you get to work.
Yeah, absolutely wait till you get to work. You'll be blitzed by lunch, I promise. So let's talk about what we're going to watch next week.
For next time, it is my pick. It is a movie from 1977
All right.
called Sorcerer by
Yeah?
William Friedkin.
Oh.
It's got to be a fantasy film, right?
Obviously, it's called Sorcerer. What else would it be?
For anybody who's listening that may not know, William Friedkin, The Exorcist,
French Connection.
French Connection, which,
Hardcore classics.
I mean, we could devote episodes to those anyway, but yeah, we don't need to.
And I've never seen this. It'll be another new discovery for me.
I have not seen it either.
I hope they like it.
I hope you'll illuminate us on Sorcerer.
I look forward to it.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, listening to our ramblings and rantings on Hardboiled. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you're inspired to go check out the film and write us and disagree with us as much as you want.
And please correct us if we got anything wrong, a little factoid wrong, a name wrong. Write
Mostly
in.
just correct Dustin. Don't correct me.
Please.
Just Dustin needs to be corrected.
And that will be at genreexposure@gmail.com.
You can also connect with us on all of your favorite social media outlets at Genre Exposure Podcast. So again, thank you guys, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye for now.
See ya.